This is a cookie I make every year around Christmas time. Almond crescent cookies are an old-fashioned classic. Your grandmother probably has a recipe for them. They are a dense, buttery, shortbread-esque cookie with lots of almond flavor. I shared this recipe a few years ago in my holiday cookie ebook. I haven't made a video of it and I've never shared it on the website until now. If you're interested in my holiday ebook, I will link to it in the description. But for now, get your oven preheating to 375 degrees Fahrenheit and let's get started. First thing you're going to need for this recipe is 1 cup of softened unsalted butter. The butter should not be super warm or melty or oily. At its very center, it should actually have a little bit of a chill to it. This is going to be really important in making sure that your cookies don't need to chill, because these cookies shouldn't need to chill, but if you use really soft butter, you're gonna have a bad time. Before I add anything else, I want to get this butter a little bit mixed up to make it easier to combine my other ingredients. And then we're going to add 1/2 cup of powdered sugar, 65 grams, and 1/4 cup or 50 grams of firmly packed light brown sugar. We'll go ahead and mix these really well until the butter and sugars are very well creamed. It's usually like 1 to 2 minutes of mixing. All right, let me grab a spatula and let's do a quick scrape of the bowl. We want to make sure everything's well incorporated, and then we'll just mix a little bit longer. Mixing the butter and sugars together very well is really important, because once we get to adding our dry ingredients, we don't want to mix as much. With shortbread, it's possible to overmix, and then you're not going to have that perfectly light and crisp texture if you overdo it. All right, next let's stir in our extracts. We'll be doing 1½ teaspoons of vanilla extract, and we're also going to add some almond extract. Almond extract is one of those ingredients where it's very easy to accidentally go overboard because it's very potent. You can make these cookies without almond, but it does add a nice something and is traditional. So we're going to add just 1/2 teaspoon. You can make them without almond extract. You shouldn't make them without the almond flour that we'll be talking about in the next step. All right, let's go ahead and stir in the extracts. Once everything's nicely combined here, let's just slide this out of the way. Grab a separate bowl for your dry ingredients. We're going to start with 2 1/3 cups or 290 grams of all-purpose flour. Next, we will add 3/4 cup of almond flour. You could grind your own almonds if you prefer. I'm just using almond flour, that I can buy at the store. Same kind of thing I would be using to make my macarons. We are also going to add a scant 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Go ahead and whisk everything together. These ingredients nicely combined. This whisk isn't cutting it. Like the wires are just too close or something. Okay, and then we're going to gradually stir this into our butter mixture. And remember what I said about not overdoing it. I'm going to add this in like 3 or 4 parts and not go overboard. I'm not trying to cream everything. I just want it combined. The dough's probably going to be a little bit crumbly still when we're done. I'll show you. The whole point of the video, right? While today's recipe could absolutely be made with your stand mixer using the paddle attachment, it's a little bit easier to accidentally overdo the dough that way, which is another reason I prefer to use the hand mixer for this one. I get bored so fast making cookie dough, so I try to crank up the speed. I always have to remind myself to not do that. That's how I make a mess. Add our last little bit here. I'm going to stop here. I'm not positive it's done yet, but let's talk about it. What we are looking for is a dough that's beginning to cling together, but is still pretty crumbly looking. You're going to notice this is a more dry and crumbly dough, and it's supposed to be. That's by design. That's how it will hold that crescent shape, but you do not want any dry streaks of flour remaining. It looks like we might have a little bit on the bottom. Nope, actually no. So I'm just going to do a little bit more stirring with my spatula, pressing it together a bit more, but I don't want to go too far. And this applies to most shortbread cookie recipes. So collect our pieces. All right, grab yourself a baking sheet and a parchment paper liner. Makes life a lot easier. And we're going to scoop a tablespoon of dough per cookie. This is about 15 grams of dough. And then go ahead and roll that dough into like a 3-inch long rope or log. You're just going to kind of fold it around your finger to make a crescent shape. You want the edges to be a little bit skinnier than the center, and place them on your baking sheet. We'll space the cookies at least 1 inch apart. And I feel like it never seems like that much cookie dough, but then we end up getting quite a lot of cookies out of it. If your dough is too crumbly, it's going to crack when you're rolling it. That's just a sign you probably need to mix it a little bit more, which is an easy fix. All right, we're going to take these over to the center rack of our 375 degree Fahrenheit preheated oven. They're going to need to bake for about 9 to 10 minutes. Look for the edges to be beginning to turn a light golden brown. Okay, these look perfect. Well, they look perfectly browned. I always feel like my crescents look a little bit wonky, but that's a personal problem. But they look cooked perfectly. So the next step for almond cookies is to roll them in powdered sugar. What I recommend to get the best powdered sugar coating is let the cookies cool for like 10 or 15 minutes on the baking rack. And then when they are no longer super hot and no longer fragile, we can grab our powdered sugar and we'll go ahead and kind of gently toss the cookies in powdered sugar while they're still a little bit warm. So I do the first roll while the cookies are warm, and then after they have cooled completely, I'll go back and do a second rolling in powdered sugar. That's, you know, an optional step, but I like a lot of powdered sugar on mine and I think they look prettier that way. You could just do one or the other, you know, while they're warm, while they're cool, your choice. You don't want to do it when the cookies are too hot or the sugar's just going to melt on them. And this is like a cup of powdered sugar I'd say you probably need. If you like these, you might like my chocolate chip snowball cookies. Those are like my sister's favorite and another one of my favorite Christmas cookies. I'm actually not sure if I even made a video of that one. All right, so there's our first step. We'll let them cool and we'll go ahead and dip them again. You see, I'll just stir the sugar periodically because it'll get a little packed down as we dip the cookies. All right, that is how you make and decorate these cute almond crescent cookies, a common Christmas tradition. That was a lot of C's. If you try this recipe, I would love to know what you think. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you next time. It's a good cookie. I was like, where's the recipe? Can't read that, my eyes are so bad. Ah, my poor cookie. Oh, you were the prettiest one. Why would I say it if I didn't know?
You have other sisters.
Yeah, but it's none of their favorites.
Surprised you knew them. See?
I feel like they look so funky. What am I doing?